Hi everybody, welcome to A Course in Miracles Applied. Today's topic is called How do we get to a full experience of lesson 162, I am as God created me. And the reason for this segment today is because if you would follow the lessons from January 1st, you would today arrive at lesson 162. I am as God created me, and my friend Erica sent this lesson out this morning to our local Course in Miracles group, and it inspired me to do a segment. I noticed for myself about my own work that I really always talk about the same thing. I start out, with good intentions to say, oh, today I'm going to talk about something different, and then it always comes back to exactly the same thing, guilt and whatever. So I'm afraid today's topic will be ending up in the same place, but that's me, and I can't do anything about it. So anyway, but what's different from today from the other ones is we have a different chart. It ends up again as the same, but it looks different in the beginning. So to lure some students in and think, oh, there's something different that we can do, and then it ends up the same. Anyway, so if you could just stop now and go to any other segment, you'll find roughly the same information, just a little bit differently set up. All right, as an introduction, I'm going to read the lesson. It's just like one page and one paragraph in the course, so I'm going to read it as kind of a meditation, as something that gets us going. And because it is today's lesson, some of you might already have read it if you follow the chronological sequence of starting in January 1st with lesson 1, and then we'll dive deep into this. But just to give you a little bit of a sense of where we are when I read the lesson, this lesson is a reminder, right? The memory of God is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's symbol is Jesus. Jesus dictated the course to Helen. So when he says, I am as God created me, we are talking about this up here, right? The full experience of I am as God created me is up here in our chart. Okay. This single thought, held firmly in the mind, would save the world. From time to time, we will repeat it as we reach another stage in learning. It will mean far more to you as you advance. These words are sacred, for they are the words God gave in answer to the world you made. By them it disappears, and all things seen within its misty clouds and vaporous illusions vanish as these words are spoken, for they come from God. He is the word by which the Son became his Father's happiness, his love, and his completion. Here creation is proclaimed and honored as it is. There is no dream these words will not dispel, no thought of sin and no illusion which the dream contains that will not fade away before their might. They are the trumpet of awakening that sounds around the world. The dead awake in answer to its call, and those who live and hear the sound will never look on death. Holy indeed is he who makes these words his own, arising with them in his mind, recalling them throughout the day, at night bringing them with him as he goes to sleep. His dreams are happy and his rest secure, his safety certain and his body healed, because he sleeps and wakens with the truth before him always. He will save the world because he gives the world what he receives each time he practices the words of truth. Today we practice simply, for the words we use are mighty, and they need no thoughts beyond themselves to change the mind of him who uses them. So holy is it changed that it is now the treasury in which God places all his gifts and all his love, to be distributed to all the world, increasing in giving, kept complete because its sharing is unlimited. And thus you learn to think with God. Christ's vision has restored your sight by salvaging your mind. We honor you today. Yours is the right to perfect holiness you now accept. With this acceptance is salvation brought to everyone, for who could cherish sin when holiness like this has blessed the world? Who could despair when perfect joy is yours, available to all as remedy for grief and misery, all sense of loss, and for complete escape from sin and guilt? And who would not be brother to you now, you, his Redeemer and his Savior, who could fail to welcome you into his heart with loving invitation, eager to unite with one like him in holiness? You are as God created you. These words dispel the night, and darkness is no more. The light is come today to bless the world, for you have recognized the Son of God, and in that recognition is the world. It's really hard to say anything after this lesson because it's so beautiful. And when we're in the right frame of mind, we can feel this lesson like Erica felt it this morning. And we read those lessons and we can feel them sometimes more, sometimes less. There is one sentence in here that kind of moves us forward into what we're talking about today. And this is sentence 3 in the first paragraph, which is, so I'm going to read the first 2 lines. The first 2 lines are, I am as God created me. This single thought held firmly in the mind would save the world. From time to time we will repeat it as we reach another stage in learning. And here's the sentence that brings us here. It will mean far more to you as you advance. Right? So whatever we experience when we first read this lesson, or when we in general read it, Jesus tells us this lesson will mean far more to you as you advance on your journey. So what does that mean? What does it mean? It will mean far more to you. So if we have some kind of an inkling of the love of God or of peace when we read this lesson, right? And then Jesus says it will mean far more to you as you advance. So this little inkling that we have is, as one of the lessons says, we can multiply by 100 and then multiply 100 by 100 more, and then we have only the smallest inclination of what will be, what our mind will be at when truth has come. Right? When this statement, I am as God created me, is no longer a sentence, it is a fact about ourselves. However, this full experience of this lesson, there's nothing negative in this lesson, there's no work involved, right? This is a 100% positive statement reminding us with each sentence of our home in God. Right? I am as God created me. Nothing has changed. There's no sin, there's no guilt, there's no fear. Nothing real can be threatened, right? Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God, as the introduction says. So Jesus is very clear. He gives us the inkling of an experience. The caveat is, then there's the next lesson. Because Jesus knows, and we all know, that we're not at the point where we can 100% identify with this and go home. Right? We notice that we read the lesson, then we go to the office, we get a phone call, and we forget the first sentence that Jesus tells us, right? This single thought held firmly in the mind would save the world. We don't hold it firmly in our mind, we forget it. And then at some point we remember it. Maybe after dinner we sit in a chair, or we're lying in bed like, oh my God, I forgot the whole lesson today, right? That's why this lesson, as beautiful as it is not the answer to us going home, right? It is one part of it. It is a very important part, right? If I would use the example of, you know, a SpaceX launch, right? Let's say when William Shatner went into space, right, to go above the atmosphere and look down, and he had this almost spiritual experience. If we think of it that way, when the rocket lifts off, it has, let's say, three different parts to it, right? The first rocket, the first fuel tank, gets us just below the layer of the atmosphere, and then that drops off and it burns up, right? Without that first thrust from the ground, we would never lift off, right? But then in order to go get to the stars, we have to ignite the second one and then the third one, and that gets us to the point where we can just cruise, right? The workbook is this first massive fuel tank that lifts us off the ground, gets us off the ground, off the earth, and it starts us on our journey, but eventually it drops off. And Ken always says, nothing survives its purpose. That first fuel tank, the moment it is burned up and it is cut off, and once it's empty, it's cut off, and then it burns up in the atmosphere. It has no longer a purpose. This is not the course with this workbook, because we can always use it. However, eventually on our journey, we will realize that those words, as beautiful as they are, do not stick. We cannot hold, as Jesus says in the first sentence, held firmly in the mind, firmly. We cannot hold on to them firmly in our mind consistently. We forget them. And we will talk today about why that is and how we can get past that. How we can get to the full experience of I am as God created me, not just as a glimpse that we can have once in a while, right? Because sometimes when we read the lessons, we have nothing, right? We don't feel anything. And sometimes we read it and we are touched by something and we feel something. And that goes on for maybe a couple of days. Then we're back in the normal ego mode, and we read the lesson and we don't feel anything. And we think we fail the course because we're not feeling it, right? That's why for me, I personally think the workbook is a very good beginning, because it sets us on the right path. It allows our rocket ship to lift off the earth, right? And go in the direction where we have to go. And then, as it says at the end of the workbook, right, at the epilogue of the workbook, it says, this course is a beginning, not an end. Your friend goes with you. You are not alone. That is the purpose of the workbook, to get us to that point where we realize, okay, now we start the journey. Now we have the goal, right? This is the goal. Lesson 162, I am as God created me. To have the full experience of that lesson, that is now our goal. And there are many lessons with different names describing the same thing with different words. But the goal is the same in the workbook, is for us to realize we have a right mind. We don't just have the ego mind, right? We have a right mind, and within that right mind, there lays the goal of our journey, which is the memory of God, to restore that memory to us. That is the goal. Full, complete restoration of the sonship is the only goal of the miracle-minded, as the Course says, right? Complete restoration of our mind to the right mind, and then the memory of God will dawn on our mind. That is the goal, right? So how do we get to this goal? One thing I can tell you from my own experience of 30 plus years with the Course, repeating the lesson, I am as God created me, for example, as a mantra, does not work. You know what? It will work, but it takes 10 times as long. The number one selling point of this Course that Jesus tells us is, it will save you time, my friend. The miracle will save you 1,000 years. And the miracle is a process that does not involve, it does involve only in the very beginning, does it involve somewhat of a mantra, I am as God created me. We repeat that thought throughout the day, right? But the journey home does not involve, other than the beginning stages, using the workbook as a mantra. Once that first fuel tank is burned up, we have the second fuel tank that will get us into the direction of truth with a straight linear focus, which the workbook alone cannot do. And a lesson like this cannot do. And the reason for that we have here in this graph. And we have spoken about this before. That's why I said it's going to be a repetition of the very same BS that I talked about before. And BS doesn't mean, you know what, it doesn't mean that. It means something else. I can't remember what it is. So let's dive into here. Theoretically, without this part here, right? Without this part, and we're going to get into what this is. Without this part, the decision maker right here, the blue rectangle, would say the words, I am as God created me. It would instantly remind him of his home, and he would let go of the other stuff, and his mind would be restored to the oneness of heaven. No issues, right? If we would not have an ego, we would just remember, and we would be back home, right? However, and that however is pretty painful at times, right? But necessary to go through. So if this attraction of God would be the only thing that pulls us toward God, the only force that we have to deal with, no question. I am as God created me. This single thought held firmly in the mind would save the world, right? We would be saved. We would look at the world a completely different way. Our vision would heal others, ourselves. We would know we're not here, and such. But we don't experience this all the time. So there must be something within us that counteracts this pull. And we have talked about that before. And the counter force, right, is the attraction of guilt. Our belief in guilt opposes the attraction of God. Our belief in guilt is the block to the awareness of the full experience of this sentence, I am as God created me. So if we read this workbook lesson, I am as God created me, and we can't quite get there. And I know you know what I mean. We can't get there. We're like, I know it intellectually, and a lot of people talk about it, and it makes sense when I hear it, but man, if I'm back in my office and I'm on a phone call, I'm gone. This is gone. right? I can maybe pick it back up, but it's very hard. So what is it? Why can't I just go up here? And this little graph in the center is kind of our mind. I mean, the whole thing is in the mind, but this is kind of the threshold. So the threshold in our mind between our ego, which is below, and the Holy Spirit and the full experience of I am as God created me is above. And in here we have put this block, and it's literally a block. And this block, if we talk about sequential terms, this block in time is the belief in past, present, and future. The ego's goal within this model is to skip the present moment completely. The ego's goal is for us never to reach this moment in the very present. Eckhart Tolle talks about this present moment a lot, right? And he comes from, for example, he comes from this point of view, right? Looking at it from here and saying we have to find the present moment, and in the present moment is where the memory of God is, right? However, he does not talk about it, and nobody talks about that this is blocked. The present moment currently is blocked and inaccessible to us. It is blocked by the attraction of guilt that pulls us away from it. The attraction of guilt, if you can visualize it, if this is guilt, right? It sits here and it is a very powerful magnet. And the decision maker is going towards it. So if you, for example, say, I am as God created me, and you're using it as a mantra and you want to get to that experience, you're like, I am as God created me, or I want to connect with Jesus, or I want to see the Christ in somebody else, right? You're kind of working hard on it. What we forget is the only point where we can get to this experience is the absolute present moment. Not 1 second in the past, not 1 second in the future. It is impossible to reach this later, and it is impossible to reach it in the past, obviously, right? We can only get to this in the present moment, but the present moment currently in our state of mind is a massive electromagnet pushing energy outward, right? So it is as if we try to get there and we can't, right? If you lie in bed at night, it happens to me all the time. You lie in bed at night and you say, okay, I'm gonna connect with Jesus right now, right? Once in a while it works, but most of the time when you're honest, if you're honest, you can't get there. Your mind wanders. Your mind wanders to the past. Your mind wanders to the future, which is fear. The past is something you did wrong, or somebody else did wrong, and you are somewhat afraid of the future. You're dreading something, right? Or you're very excited, which is the same. But this is a very powerful magnet, and it locks this very present moment, so we cannot go near it. So it is a repellent. The guilt that sits, our belief in guilt sits as a repellent in front of this present moment, and we can't get to it. We're always being deferred, right? If you try to put two magnets, the North Pole, both of them together, you can't get there, right? You can't get there. You have to switch it, flip it, and then boom, right? But as it is right now, in our mind, our belief in guilt is the ego's present moment. And for us, guilt is something we don't want to go near. So we're preventing ourselves from approaching it. We're diverting ourselves into the future and into the past, so we don't have to look at this present moment, which is blocked, which is this guilt, this attraction of guilt is repelling us, so we can't get through here. the counteracting, what do you call it? The counteracting thought of the Course to this is the holy instant. Right? The holy instant is when we for one moment don't attack, when we for one moment slip through and all of a sudden have this inkling of this experience, right? That's the holy instant. That is the counterforce to this attraction of guilt that is, in one model, it is pulling us away from here, right? The attraction is at the bottom and it pulls the decision maker who wants to go up, right? The decision maker wants to go up and it pulls us down. We can't go here. We're going here. We're going always coming back down, right? The other model would be there's this guilt that sits here. It repels anything that comes close and the decision maker simply cannot get to the very present moment, which is the Strait of Gibraltar, right, in the Second World War was a very narrow waterway that it was very hard to get through. So this is like this moment right now, at this very moment, it's already gone. If we don't catch it, it's gone, it's not coming. It's right now, and that is closed up to us. We have closed it. Our belief in guilt is what locks this present moment. The door, we lock ourselves, and we cannot get to this experience, I am as God created me. And then what we try to do is try to hammer on this door. We bang, we use TNT. We use this as a mantra. I am as God created me. I am as God created me, right? We're trying to hammer it into our brain. We use alarm clocks. Every 10 minutes, it beeps and we're like, okay, I am as God created me, right? That's fine to do. However, it will not change this. We will not get through here if we only try to have the positive affirmations to get us through, because the attraction of guilt is 10 times stronger than those affirmations that we're trying to do. That's why Jesus says this sentence will mean far more to you as you advance. And the advance is to get close to this present moment. So if you see your journey with the Course over a timeline, in the beginning, we usually are here and here, even with the Course, right? It's very hard for us to go anywhere near this, because you have there's a bunch of safety things that the ego implemented. One of them is called the double shield of oblivion. Everything is doubly defended against. So, we have several shields here, right? That prevent us from going through here. Because the ego, obviously, the moment the decision maker goes through here and arrives here, all this falls away. Right? The ego is completely gone. It never existed in the first place. And once we're here, above this threshold, the ego will disappear. And the ego, which is the part of us that wants to be an individual, does not want to let this happen. So it makes up all those defenses that repel us or that pull us away from the present moment. And if you look at your thoughts, you must realize that we are never in the present moment. We're always somewhere in the future, somewhere in the past, and you can almost feel that we just can't get there. It's like we have the best of intentions, right? We go up and then we just can't get to this single moment in time. The ego's whole doctrine, the whole thought system of the ego has one single goal, which is for the decision maker not to reach the present moment. It is extremely important for the ego, for the decision maker, not to reach this. And the closer we come to this moment, the more we realize what's going on, right? The more vigilant the ego becomes, the heavier those drapes, right? Those double drapes, those defenses seem to be getting. The more we push towards this, the more this seems to be coming like, whoa. It is as if the repellent magnet, the ego has a scale and it goes like maximum force, right? That's my experience. I don't know about you, but this is what I experience. The more I really want to go up here because this longing is so strong, the more this seems to be saying no, right? Because the ego part of me does not want to go up there, because up there, this part of me, this individual part does not exist. So this going through here means the death of the ego, right? The death, not even death, it means the ego ceases to seem to be, as the Course says, right? The ego ceases to seem to be. And the ego doesn't want to do this, right? And the ego will never change its motivation. The ego's motivation will always be 100% do not approach this moment. And it tells us, if you approach this moment, you will be killed, you will be destroyed, right? Do not approach this moment. That is the ego's goal. And in other words, Jesus says in the Course, the ego's doctrine is as follows: seek and do not find. Try to get there, but never get there. Never get to the present moment. And the ego has a very smart trick. It gives you pseudo paths to the present, right? All kinds of mind yoga, right? You'd call it mind yoga. Like you do this meditation with this stone, and then you have to do this ritual and there to get there. It has nothing to do with this moment at all. The only way we can go to the present moment is when we go through this guilt. There's no other way in the Course curriculum to get to this without looking at this. There's no other way. This Course seems to suggest at times that you can just say, I am as God created me, this single thought held firmly in the mind would save the world, etc. Right? What we read in the beginning. It seems to suggest that if we just hold this thought in our mind, we will be there. But it's not working, right? And then we start thinking, oh, we're not doing enough, right? If I would do this one workbook lesson perfectly, I would certainly be there, right? And Jesus says, no, this workbook lessons, as all the other workbook lessons, as I'm telling you in the very end, is a beginning, not an end. Your friend goes with me. You are not alone from this point forward. Right now, your work begins. Right now, your training, your mind training, has been completed up to a certain point where you now recognize, okay, I have a right mind, I have a wrong mind, and I am the decision-making mechanism in this. I am not the one that's being decided upon. I am the one that makes the decision. And now, from that point on, stage 2 in our rocket ship into the heavens is now Jesus says, okay, now let me explain to you those two decisions. The decision for the ego and the decision for the right mind. What it all means, and then we can decide at the very end what we want to do, right? So in terms of this chart, this means that our task, we can leave this safely alone. We do not have to worry about this. We don't even have to mention it in any thought. I know this sounds very counterintuitive. We do not have to worry about love. Love is. It is our only reality. We don't have to affirm it. We don't have to try to go towards it. We can leave it and realize it is there. It is there, and it has a very powerful magnetic pull towards us that once we let go of our anchor, we don't have to do anything to go there. The prince and the princess do not have to prove that they are the children of the king to be let back in the castle. They are the prince, they are the princess. No, there's no doubt on their inheritance. They don't have to go to the guards and say, I'm the prince, I'm the princess, let me in. The doors, they approach the doors will open, the trumpets will start, and they will go into the castle and be reunited with their father. There's nothing they have to do to get there. All they have to do is turn around and go, right? But in order to do that, they have to realize that they don't want to go back. That is the core of the course curriculum, is for us to realize, I do not want to approach the present moment. I consciously and systematically, myself, I am blocking the entrance to this present moment with all the thoughts that I generate. All the thoughts in my head are the tools I use to get me off this moment, right? And those thoughts are either about the past or either about the future. Because if you realize, once you're in the present moment, there are no more thoughts. There's no thought in the present. All thoughts, even if we close our eyes, we watch our thoughts, those thoughts are either from the present or from the future. The entity that is watching, that is, but we're going to get there. That is how you get through there. But we have to realize that those thoughts that we think are there for a very specific purpose, and that purpose is to prevent us from reaching that point. And we put those thoughts in place. Nobody else did. We are the ones generating them, and the fuel that generates those thoughts is guilt. I don't know if you've seen the movie Inception. Jesus uses the word inception once in the course. And he says, every disordered thought is attended by guilt at its inception and maintained by guilt in its continuance. So guilt is the cause. Guilt is this powerful, because we gave it the power of God, right? The powerful magnet that pushes out those thoughts about, they all have to do with the past, with the future, and those thoughts are there to attract our attention in our mind, right? There's a thought about not being able to pay a bill, and we follow it, and the consequences and all that, and we follow it. And then there's another thought about our health. There's another thought about world economy, right? Politics, our neighbor, our family member, our child, our parent, whatever it is, and we follow that thought. And the reason for that thought is to not let us go here. And we must realize that. The key to approaching this is to realize the realization that we are doing this, right? When Jesus says in chapter 27, section 8, the secret of salvation is but this, that you are doing this unto yourself. Those thoughts we have in our mind that prevent us from going to this present moment are there for a very specific purpose, namely to prevent us, right? The secret of salvation is not some magic thing that has to do with Jesus or the Holy Spirit or anything spiritual. The secret of salvation is that you're doing this unto yourself. We are the ones that belief in guilt, and that guilt generates those thoughts that push us away from the present moment. And the only way to get to this moment is to look at the guilt. That's it. There is no other. There is no kinder way of getting there as to look directly at the guilt. The unkindness is to say, no, it's not that. I just have to repeat that line, I am as God created me, and get there. That is the unkind approach, because it will not get us there. The ego knows that. That's why the ego says, yeah, go. Stay with this until the end of your spiritual journey. Just say, I am as God created me, and you will eventually go there. Because the ego does not want us to go there. Right? And Jesus says, this is a great start, and from now on, let me teach you what is preventing you from having that experience. That is our task from now on. Right? When Jesus says in chapter 11, section 5, he says, this is the core paragraph that speaks exactly to this, right? He says, no one can escape from illusions. The illusion of guilt that prevents us from this, right? The illusion of this attraction of guilt. No one can escape from illusions unless he looks at them, for not looking is the way they are protected. There is no need to shrink from illusions or from guilt, for they cannot be dangerous. We are ready to look more closely at the ego's thought system, because together we have the lamp that will dispel it. And since you realize you do not want it, you must be ready. Let us be very calm in doing this, for we are merely looking honestly for truth. The dynamics of the ego will be our lesson for a while, for we must first look at this to see beyond it, since you have made it real. We will undo this error quietly together and then look beyond it to truth. The whole escape from this, the whole path to this present moment lies in this one paragraph. The dynamics of the ego is the section, right, in chapter 11. We are ready to look more closely at the ego's thought system, and since you realize you do not want it, you must be ready. And then he says, let us be very calm in doing this, right? Because we get very frazzled, we get scared, we get terrified when we reach this present moment, and we flee right back into the past or the future, right? And you know this step, I'm sure. The closer you come here, the more work you do with the course, the more intensified that work gets, the further you seem to be away from it, right? The more this defenses, right? Those defenses all of a sudden, has like cannons and lasers, right? And barbed wire and mines, minefields, and you're like, stuff is blowing up left and right. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm gonna withdraw, right? We're withdrawing back into the safety of our ego, right? Of that belief in guilt. Like, okay, I can deal with guilt because I can push it outside. It's in the world and I'm fine, right? But we're not fine. We're not here. We're not in the full experience of this line, I am as God created me. We are miserable down here. How can we be not miserable with this attraction of guilt as our main motive in this world? How can we not be absolutely and utterly miserable? Right? And we try to stay afloat. We're thinking, the future will bring something different, right? A positive future is an ego device preventing us from reaching the present moment. Here he says in chapter 23, section 2, the laws of chaos. Be not deceived when madness takes a form you think is lovely. Right? A form that you think is lovely. I'm getting a car next week. I'm going on a date next week. My grandchild's graduation is next week. I'm going to win the lottery someday, right? Or I'm going to be cured someday. Or in this election, something good will happen, right? Be not deceived when madness takes a form you think is lovely. What is intent on your destruction is not your friend. Future happiness is not your friend. He says in chapter 26, section 8, be not content with future happiness. It has no meaning and is not your just reward, for you have cause for freedom now. The ego says, in the future something good will happen, which will get you as close as I can get you, the ego says. There's a little star. It twinkles a little bit, right? Maybe we get a new car or we have something in our lives, right? Be not content with future happiness. It has no meaning and it is not your just reward. The ego says, I'm rewarding you in a week. You're going to get something good happening to you. That prevents us from saying, no, the future is not my friend. Future happiness is not my friend. My friend is this moment that is just past all this guilt here in the present. That is my only friend. I have no other friends than the present moment. I'm sorry about it. If any of my friends are listening, sorry. We have no friends other than the present moment, because if we're not in the present moment, we don't love our friends. How can we love them if we're somewhere in the past, which is sin, somewhere in the future, which is fear? How can we love them if we're not here? We can only love them when we have the full experience of, I am as God created me. Otherwise, we look at our friends always from this attraction of guilt. If they give us a little happiness, here a little twinkle, a little star in the world, and we don't feel the dreadful present block of guilt, we're happy for like 2 hours, right? When we have dinner with our friends. But we're not feeling this. We don't feel the full experience of this workbook lessons. In fact, we most likely forget the whole lesson when we are out at dinner with them. So the ego's goal is for us never to get there, and Jesus's goal for us is to get there, right? That is why he says, let us be very calm in doing this, because he knows this is not a calm time. Reaching the present moment, preparing ourselves for the full experience of this line is not a calm time. If it would be calm, we would be already there. If we're here and have calm, this is a pseudo calm, this is nice calm, we're a little calmer than usual. And we should not dismiss those times, because those are usually light posts, right? Like a lighthouse that's like, hey, go here. You're in the darkness, but here's a moment of light, right? And with this moment of light, we can then illuminate the guilt within us and go a little bit further towards this present moment. And Jesus says the only way out is in, right? No one can escape from illusions until he looks at them. For not looking is the way they are protected. So looking at all those dynamics that we just talked about, looking at if I'm not in the present moment, I'm attracted by something that is yet greater than this in my mind. In reality it's not, but I've given this so much power that it is a powerful force against experiencing this. And he says, and this is I think for me, this is the most important sentence in the course. We have talked about it a couple of times. He says, but this you must remember, the attraction of guilt opposes the attraction of God. We cannot get to the present moment unless we turn around, this seems like spiritual suicide, right? We're going towards love, towards this present moment, and what Jesus asks us to do, literally, he says, don't go this way, turn around and look at this with me. And once you look at it really closely, you will realize this is all made up. There is no monster in the closet, but if we don't look at it, we will not recognize it is made up, and we will forever try to reach this moment and forever be attracted a little bit by those little twinkles. And we think, oh, this is it, I got it. And then we lose it again. And we don't even think why we lost it, right? We don't realize we lost it because we don't want to keep it. We must look at the wish that says, I do not want to be with God. I don't want to have anything to do with Jesus. I want to be as far away from this I am as God created me as possible. Otherwise, I would be there 24/7. I would not be there only once in a while. I would be there always. We do not want to go near this present moment. And that is an insight we have to realize and look at with Jesus. Without looking at that wish not to go there, how can we get there? Because only our wish to get through here is what will get us through here, right? Our wish to get through to the present moment, to experience this again, to experience the green grass of home, right? This feeling of home up here. We must want it more than we want this. And Jesus says, in order for you to want this more, let me show this to you. Let me show that what is not love is murder. Let me show it to you. And let us be very calm in looking all this, right? Look at this attraction, how deep this is rooted in your life. With me, I am the lamp. Look at this with me, and then you can realize what it is in all its ugliness, right? And then you can make a decision against it and say, you know what? I want this more. But right now, we want this more, but we have no clue. We think we want this, but we don't. We want the attraction of guilt. It's like a dog rolling in the mud. It's the best, right? It's rolling in the mud and it's like, oh my God, this is so awesome. That's us. We're rolling in the mud and we think we don't want to roll in the mud, but we do. And Jesus, just the only thing he can do is say, listen, I can't help you in the mud. I can help you realize that whatever you're feeling, all those emotions that you have, all those thoughts you have, you want them actively. You chose them. You hold on to them. You're married to them. You are mind melted to your ego. That is what you have to acknowledge. If you're not in the present, experiencing this, it is because you do not want to get there. That is the only way you will eventually get there, is through the realization that if you're not at peace, it is because you do not want it. And you do not want it because you're extremely afraid. And your fear comes from this attraction of guilt. Without the attraction of guilt, there would be no fear. The fear of the future and the sin in the past are gone. But the attraction guilt holds for you is very powerful in your mind. And that is what we need to look at. And once we look at it closer and closer and closer, you and me together, we will have the lamp that will dispel it. And dispelling it doesn't mean magically it'll go poof. Dispelling it means we realize that this is absolute insanity, this thought system, and that we are 100% married to it. And then we learn over time to have a little smile on our face, like, oh my lordy, lordy, right? We have a little smile, like our lips go a little bit like this. Right? That's how we start. We don't have a like joy, but like a little like, right? That's probably the first positive reaction to our egos, like, all right. And Ken would always say, what else is new, right? We look at the ego, what else is new? But we have to examine it. We have to realize that we want it. We have to realize the terrible attraction we have with it and it has toward us. And only when we do that can we then say, you know what, Jesus, I don't want this anymore. And the moment we don't want it anymore, the moment we want this more than this, we will go up here. And those defenses will completely dissolve, right? The moment the guilt is gone, nothing prevents us from going there. The decision maker will literally don't even have to do anything. Really, there's no mind yoga that we have to do to get to this moment, because this is our home. This is the door to our home. The doors will be open. We approach the door and the trumpets will ring clear, as Tolkien said, right? In the Two Towers, I think. You open the door. No, in the Fellowship. Sorry, geeks. Fellowship. The doors will open and we will go straight through. There's nothing we have to do to get there. This is our inheritance, right? This is our birthright. It is beyond our birthright. It is who we are. What we are is this. I am as God created me, period. Nothing can shake that or move that. Nothing real can be threatened in any way, shape, or form. So there's nothing we have to do about that. All we need to do, and that is not just easy all we need to do, but literally it is everything we need to do lies in this one thing, to examine the ego thought system and then eventually say, I want this more. But in order to want this more, we have to realize how much we wanted this. Once this is gone, we will literally float back in. Because nothing holds us back. This magnetic force is stronger than anything in the universe, obviously, because this is real and none of this is real. It will just pull us in and we're back. And all this is gone, right? I'm gonna do that so we have a little bit of a happy outcome here. The present moment is also no longer necessary because the present moment is our reality. Right? Everything else is illusion. So the present moment will disappear. All this is gone. Right? And the decision maker is back here. And then once the decision maker is back there, the decision maker is no longer. The decision maker is only there until we have made the decision, and then we don't need it anymore. And as Ken said, nothing survives its purpose. Once our purpose is reached, we're up here, the decision-making part of the mind dissolves into the oneness of heaven and the full experience of I am as God created me, which is the goal of the course. This is a nice board. Thanks for watching.